This is Into the Multiverse with Josh Peck.
Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of Into the Multiverse. Was Stephen Hawking actually right? Did he actually agree with some stuff that we've been talking about on this show for quite a while now? Well, we're going to find out. If you haven't had a chance to do so, go ahead and subscribe. Now, make sure when you do subscribe, you got to click the little bell, and even then, you might not get notifications. We've been hearing from about half of our audience that people are not getting notified even after they click the bell and tell YouTube they want to be notified. So if you're not, just know that every Thursday morning at 9 a.m. on this channel and also on Roku, you will get a new episode of Into the Multiverse every Thursday, 9 a.m. So strangely enough, it seems Stephen Hawking's, Professor Hawking's final theory that he put out before he died tracks more along with this show than with current understanding of multiverse theory. It actually challenges current understanding of multiverse theory, which is pretty exciting because we've been doing that on this show for a couple years. And it's good to know that there's at least somebody out there who at least might have a piece of it. So we're going to talk about that. But for those who might be brand new to the show and have no idea what I'm even talking about, that's okay. I'll give you a brief rundown of multiverse theory. So basically right now, there's a couple different ways to look at the term multiverse. We on Into the Multiverse take a certain definition of it, but most times when physicists talk about the multiverse, they're talking about what's called the many worlds interpretation. We don't hold to that view here personally, but that's what most physicists talk about. In many worlds, what it is it's basically the theory that says there are an infinite number of universes. We're just one of them, which how do you have one out of infinity? We'll talk about that in a minute, but that there's an infinite number of universes with an infinite number of versions of you and me, where each one we've made a different decision each time. The way that it boils down is there's supposedly an infinite number of ways that particles can arrange themselves in the universe. And for each one of those ways, you get a new universe. Now, there's a problem with that, and it's with the term infinity. It's with the word infinity. And actually, famous mathematician Carl Gauss said that infinity was merely a way of speaking and that he protests against its use because it's not real. It's just an idea. It holds no basis in reality, in physical reality. It's just an idea. Like Carl Gauss said, it's just a way of talking about things. Now, usually in mathematics, if you work out a math problem and your answer is infinity, then you got to go back and start again because you did something wrong. That's like the fail proof. That's what tells you made a mistake along the way. But now more and more and more physicists are getting used to this idea of infinity, but it's just not true. And it can be shown in a couple of different ways. For example, years and years and years ago, many physicists thought that the universe was probably infinitely old and infinitely large. Now that's both of those have since been disproven, but think about that. And then that's where multiverse theory came about later, was more embraced later. Actually, many worlds interpretation was developed in the 50s, but it got embraced later after they discovered that the universe is not infinitely old or big. So they embraced multiverse. But think about it this way. If the universe or the multiverse, let's just say universe, was infinitely big, that would mean that our solar system is a certain percentage of infinity. Well, how small of a percentage of infinity can you have without that percentage also becoming infinity? You can't. What's 1% of infinity? Infinity. What's 0.0000001% of infinity? It's still infinity. Our solar system certainly isn't infinitely big. Our world isn't infinitely big. If we occupy something that's infinite, we would have to be infinite ourselves by definition. Now think about it in terms of age, because there is a theory out there called gravity's rainbow that if it were ever proven true, somehow it would suggest that the universe is infinitely old. Now let's just say that they actually did prove this gravity's rainbow. All that says is that different wavelengths of light operate differently in a black hole. But let's say that that's proven right. And then scientists try to say, well, this means the universe is infinitely old. No, it doesn't. Let's think about that logically. Same analogy. Okay, so I've been alive for 33, almost 34 years now. If the universe is infinitely old, my time here in reality occupies a certain percentage of infinity. I'm not infinitely old. What percentage of infinity could that possibly be? So see, infinity really is just an idea. It's not real. There's no basis in reality. Now, some people might be asking, well, what about God? Isn't God infinite? God's technically eternal, and there's a difference. Eternity is a state outside of time, and infinity is a never-ending stretch of time or space. So I guess if you use it that way, you could say technically God is infinite, but it's more accurate to say that God's eternal. So getting back to this, that is the current understanding of many worlds interpretation, that there's an infinite number of universes. We don't hold to that view here on this show because it's illogical. It just doesn't make any sense. But there is another way of looking at multiverse theory that I think is more accurate and tracks more with reality and even the Bible, strangely enough. If you didn't think there were quantum physics in the Bible, think again. This version says that there could be that our universe is a three-dimensional slice of a larger construct. In biblical terms, you could think of this as we're the shadow of something greater, of heaven, or something bigger, and we're the shadow of that. You know, of course, the shadow is an analogy, but you could think of it that way. So think of the universe as a three-dimensional slice. You could think of it as a stack of magazines here. Let's just take one magazine because I don't want to get the whole stack. But if you have a magazine here, remember this magazine from the quantum entanglement illustration? If you have a magazine here, it's made up of pages. You got plenty of pages here. But all these pages, technically they're three-dimensional, but let's just, by analogy, let's just say that they're two-dimensional sheets, okay? And when you stack them all together, you have a magazine. You have a three-dimensional object, a magazine. Well, think of our universe as a three-dimensional slice of a four-dimensional construct, something bigger than itself, something consisting of more spatial dimensions than itself. That actually tracks more in line with reality and with the Bible, because the implication here is you would not need infinity. There's nothing to say that these slices would have to be infinite in order to exist. You can have a magazine that's 50 pages, you could have a magazine that's 1,000 pages, but it can still exist. So you don't have to have an infinite number of universes. Also, in this version of multiverse theory, these other universes don't have to be inhabited at all. It doesn't require them to be inhabited by other versions of us. The only way that would be possible is if we ourselves were extra-dimensional beings. Now, sure, we have a spirit, we have a soul, we have all that stuff, but physically extra-dimensional could be something different. It just all depends on how we define these terms. And as far as we know, we're only three-dimensional. So in that version, in the version of multiverse that we talk about here on Into the Multiverse, when we say multiverse, that's what we mean. We're talking about our universe, physical creation, being just a subset of a larger creation that we can't see. We would call that heaven or the spirit world or the unseen realm. We would use terms like that to describe it, as have people for generations and generations back. So getting back to Professor Hawking's theory, he was actually always troubled by the many worlds interpretation of the multiverse. He actually said that he didn't even care for the multiverse. He went as far as to say that. And the direct quote was, "I have never been a fan of the multiverse." That's what he said. So Stephen Hawking, working with a Belgian colleague, extended out what's called holographic theory or holographic universe theory. Now, those of you who were familiar with the work of Chuck Missler might start to get excited now, because Chuck Missler talked a lot about that. Well, that's exactly what Stephen Hawking was talking about in this final theory. Now, this theory basically says the universe is like a long, vast, strange, large hologram. So in other words, 3D reality is an illusion, and we're only a projection from a two-dimensional surface. At least that's how the headlines would describe it. But in reality, that's kind of a sensational way to look at it. In reality, the idea of the hologram is meant to be taken as a metaphor or an illustration, much like how we used a stack of papers or a magazine to explain the multiverse. We're not saying that the universe is literally a sheet of paper, and holographic universe theory isn't saying that the universe is literally a hologram, but it's used as an explanation or a metaphor to explain a larger concept, which is pretty difficult to believe. It's pretty difficult to understand, let alone believe, but Stephen Hawking seemed to, which is interesting because it tracks more in line with the Bible, what we've talked about here on this show. So again, while there are going to be a lot of headlines that say, Stephen Hawking said that we're a hologram and you should literally think of a two-dimensional surface that's storing all the information and we're just being projected projected through it. It's not literal. It's a metaphor. There's not some literal, nobody thinks there's some literal two-dimensional disc somewhere out there in heaven or whatever, and we're being projected through that. It's only an illustration. It's a metaphor, and it's a good metaphor, but as it is a metaphor, we should not take it literally. So anyway, all that being said, thank you so much for watching. This has been a lot of fun. We're definitely going to be staying on this story. We will follow it out as it develops, and I hope this was helpful for you. I hope you learned something. It's always good for me. Now, if you haven't had a chance to do so, please subscribe. It's important you subscribe. It's important that you click the bell to get notifications, and YouTube still might not notify you anyway. It's also important to leave comments and stay active in that. Even on the Facebook page, Into the Multiverse does have a Facebook page, believe it or not. Facebook doesn't want you to know it because it won't share any of our posts. It won't let any of you know. But you can follow the page and just keep checking back every Thursday at 9 a.m. for new episodes. We'll have a new episode for you every Thursday morning, 9 a.m. All right. Well, all that being said, thank you so much for joining me. And until next time, take care and God bless.
For nearly 20 years, Dr. Thomas R. Horn has warned of a coming transhuman hybrid age. It has finally arrived. And now Zygon, the celebrated peer-reviewed journal of religion and science, has published a thesis by a professor of religion and philosophy at the University of London, identifying Dr. Horn and his team from Skywatch TV and Defender Publishing as the leaders of the transhuman resistance. But what is transhumanism, and why are academics and leading futurists worldwide suddenly so concerned with Horn's milieu? Hold on to your seat, as all will be disclosed this April. The milieu. Welcome to the transhuman resistance.
The world's top academics and futurists are identifying Dr. Thomas Horn and his milieu as the leaders of the transhuman resistance. But what is Horn and his team of researchers getting ready to expose about the rapidly approaching hybrid age that has top-level professors so alarmed? All is revealed in the new Milieu Hyper Collection. When you order the Milieu from Skywatch TV, you'll also receive the brand new full-length documentary film, The Last Religion, featuring over a dozen theologians including Chuck Missler, Gary Stearman, L.A. Marzulli, Joel Richardson, and more on the subject of artificial intelligence, virtual reality, and the unfolding of the last days. This cutting-edge work was 30 years in the making and is being called the prophecy film for millennials. Also included is the never-before-released audio series The Hybrid Age, featuring Dr. Thomas Horn and legendary radio personality Steve Quayle. This amazing audio series is nearly 5 hours in length and discusses the game-changing genetic advances scientists are making now. Plus, you'll also receive the 2-time Telly Award-winning documentary Inhuman, featuring members of the U.S. President's Council on Bioethics, top transhumanists, and world-renowned theologians discussing how thousands of government and private research facilities around the world are already working to rewrite what it means to be human. But that's not all. With every Milieu Hyper collection, we're also giving away a surprise package with a retail value of $75 in extraordinary overstock products, mystery items that may include books, audio series, music CDs, DVDs, documentary movies, emergency preparedness items, and more. Sold separately, these items hold a retail value of over $160. Yours now for your donation of only $35 plus shipping and handling. So arm yourself for the days ahead with everything you need to know about the coming hybrid age. Get the Milieu Hyper Collection now at skywatchtvstore.com or by calling 1-844-750-4985.